Welcome to Tune In with TPL, a radio show that connects the Tuscaloosa community with out of this world science, technology, engineering, and math topics. In this show, we focus on things that you're interested in, pair it with a few exciting activities, and we hear a word from people in our community who do those jobs every day. Join us as we dive right in.
Welcome to this episode of Tune In with TPL. My name is Caitlin, and I am a youth librarian at the Tuscaloosa Public Library. Today, we'll be diving in to learn more about robots. Now, you may not realize it, but you come into contact with items that are made with robots nearly every day. Things like vehicles are so heavy that we need robots to help us build them. Also, if you've ever been to a STEM program at the library, or you've visited your school with things like Ozobots or Cubettos, you were able to get a hands-on approach to learning how to code robots. But today, we'll get to hear from a robotics student at the University of Alabama, and they'll answer all of our burning questions about how robots move and what they're made of. After we speak with our expert, we'll use our new knowledge to conduct an experiment of our own. Now, without further ado, let's tune in together and get ready to learn more about robots.
So I'm Marty Ball. I'm the branch manager at the Weaver Bolden branch of the Tuscaloosa Public Library, and I am here with...
I'm Gus Lowshelter. I'm a master's candidate for aerospace engineering at University of Alabama.
And today we're going to ask some questions about robots, and that's something you're very interested in, right?
As is, yeah.
Okay. Well, we will get right to it. The first question is, what are robots most commonly made of?
Okay, well, robots, I guess if we take like a system look at it, robots are generally, they're made up of like structural components, like the body. There's a control system, like an antenna or a receiver. That's how it receives its commands. Manipulators, that's basically the robot's hands, that a lot of times like little pinchy claws or, whatever, a drill. And if a robot needs to move, generally you'll have something like legs or wheels, sort of a propulsion or drivetrain kind of thing. To make this stuff work, we basically need something called actuators, which are any part that move. They come in two types. You have like straight line movements. We call those linear, like think a piston, or like rotational, like they move in a circle, like sort of like a motor. As far as materials go, it's mostly like plastic and metal.
Cool. Are there different coding languages? How many are there?
Yeah, there are probably thousands, I would say. We only like use a couple though, as far as like general purpose. Some common ones like JavaScript. I think a lot of people would know that. A lot of games are coded in JavaScript. A lot of jobs, they'll make you learn like Python. That's good for data science. That's good for, you can also probably write games in that. HTML and CSS, those are great for website design. C++, that's an interesting one. It's really old, and it's called low level, which doesn't mean that it's easy. It's kind of the opposite. It's closer to how computers talk. Like if we take the ones and zeros of binary to be a computer language, C++ is a lot more similar to that than something like Python. And that seems like a lot, but if you wanted to learn like several languages, it wouldn't be as hard as learning like several human languages. There are a lot of like similarities between them. So once you learn one, you haven't learned them all, but you've got a good step towards learning them all. So,
yeah. So which one's the easiest one? Where would you
Python, probably out of the four that I mentioned. It's we would describe it as like higher level. It would be sort of more similar to like human language. The syntax, or which is basically just how the words go together in the language, it's pretty similar to human speech.
Cool. Can robots be made out of natural materials like wood or potatoes?
Sure. A lot of robots are made out of wood. I had a project last semester. We built an RC plane with tilt rotors, which basically means that the propellers, they tilt upwards so it can take off like a helicopter. That was made almost entirely out of wood, except for the electronic parts. As for potatoes, you could certainly try. They're pretty squishy, but it's interesting. There's a field called biocomposites. It's kind of related to my research work. The focus is to basically make super strong materials out of like natural materials. I saw some research. I read a paper. They were researching crab shells to make body armor. for the police and military. They're also interested. I saw they were working on like coconut shells. It's incredibly hard, incredibly light, and completely natural. So certainly, yeah.
Do robots malfunction more than humans?
Mm. Well, the thing is, humans are like naturally imprecise. We have like human error, which is essentially no matter how careful you are, a human being is like only kind of precise. If a human being is cutting shapes out of wood, like you're gonna be able to see with your naked eye that they're not the same. Last semester we had that problem. Our laser cutter went down, so we ended up having to cut the frame of our airplane by hand, and so the airplane sort of twisted almost 10 degrees by the time we were done with it. Robots on the other hand are a lot more precise, but they can break down, of course, whereas humans generally don't do that. They need a ton of maintenance because they're really complicated. So to answer your question, I think both definitely have their place. I used to work on a factory floor. You on most production lines, for instance, you'll have people and robots working side by side. They each do tasks that sort of fit their strengths.
Wait, you're obviously not older because I break down plenty at my um would robots ever be smart enough to take over the world?
Well, the nice thing about robots is that we do, or they do what we tell them. I kind of like to think of them as big tools. Even like thinking robots, like with AI, I work with AI. It's really just AI is sort of a bad name for it right now. It's really just that we're teaching a robot how to learn how to do its task really well. To take a more positive look at things, maybe I think someday you will be able to have like actual conversations with robots that have their own ideas. But as for today, like even AI is mostly just like teaching a computer how to guess really well.
Yeah. Are there robots that play sports or go to places and do things that we can't do? And what are some examples of those?
Sure. Like on Mars, there are three active rovers right now. There are two American ones, Curiosity and Perseverance, and there's a Chinese one, Zhurong. Like no person has ever been to Mars, but we have surface samples. We thanks to these rovers, we learn a lot about the Martian surface. It's not quite, but it's almost like we were there. And we use underwater robots. Those are AUVs, I think, automated underground or underwater vehicles. They go to the deepest depths without the need for a human pilot. You don't need to pressurize the internals. You don't need to worry about food or coming back up, decompression problems. As for the sports, there are robot-specific sports. There's like Robot Wars. Okay, that's less of a sport. That's more like gladiatorial combat, I guess.
Not like what was Baymax?
Oh yeah, sure. Baymax from. Are you talking about from Big Hero 6?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but I know MIT has some like soccer playing robots. There's called like Cheetah or Leopard or something like that. That's not all they do, but it's something they can do. So yeah.
Is it possible to create a robot that can write poems?
Poems. Well, certainly, yeah. I mentioned AI before. If you let these AI like read enough poems, they can start to write their own. There's no guarantees they'll be good though. I in preparation for this, I went and I tried. There's a software called OpenAI, which is just it's an AI that's been trained on a ton, like most of available human writing at this point, I'm sure. And I asked it to generate a poem, and this is what it gave me. It gave me a funny poem about a worm. So I'll read that for you if you'd like. There was once a worm so slimy, he made everyone feel grimy. He would squirm and squiggle and make everyone giggle. That worm was such a pain, he made everyone insane. That was written by a robot.
I think that's a great poem.
Yeah. I looked that poem up. It doesn't exist. So that was written by a robot on the spot.
That is awesome. So the last question I have, and I might have more questions after this. What are your thoughts on flying cars? Or Jeremiah said it's a no for him, but he wants to know what you think.
I would agree. Like a plane, you can't fly them in bad weather. Breaking down doesn't mean stalling out on the road. It means falling out of the sky. You could be landing on a house or a guy, and that's no good. They're much harder to drive. Like pilots have to go to school. I'm from Mississippi. There's a whole pilot program there. It's involved. It's very involved.
It should be.
And they're hard to land. Yeah, like you'd also have to put landing spots everywhere, every store and school and wherever else people go. And it's also just like not that much faster and more convenient than a normal car. Like the time you'd save. versus like the maintenance costs versus it's just really infeasible. I can't deny that it would be pretty cool though. If you're interested, I like implore everybody to look into ultralight aircraft, which are probably the closest thing we'll see to flying cars in any form of like mass production. They're like tiny one-seater planes, but they're basically like a bike with a wing and a big fan that pushes them. It's not for everybody, but yeah, they're pretty cool from a recreational standpoint.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Mm.
So tell me more about what your research it focuses on and what you want to do with robotics.
Sure. So I'm in the computational imaging and smart structures lab here at UA. We work a lot with, I guess this kind of qualifies as robots. We work a lot with like ultrasound imaging in structural components. So basically it's sort of similar to ultrasound like you'd see in like medical applications. Like you basically shake a thing really fast and it tells you what's inside of it. But what we can do with that is essentially we can see damage in structural parts like in an airplane, even if we can't actually physically take it apart and look at it. We call that non-destructive testing or structural health monitoring. And that's really cool. We've been working on some algorithms to basically look at more complex specimens. So what that basically means is like if there's a part with a lot of weird geometry, like the waves are going to be more difficult to see. So we've been trying to kind of work through that. But right now I've actually kind of taken a little detour. Like I said, I'm working with AI. I'm trying to work on applying AI to signal processing like that. So we can basically have the computer guess what's going to happen and kind of locate the damage for us, if that makes sense.
That's very interesting. I don't think of robots in those terms.
The funny thing about like the term robot is it's so, from like a pop culture perspective, you kind of have this idea of like a humanoid robot in this way where it has both the thinking component and like the physical sort of the humanoid body that does things like a human does. It has like its manipulators and its movement. I mean, I think like I'm obviously on the thinking end of things, generally speaking, but you know, it's funny, most robots are a microcosm of that. And what I mean by that is like they do only like their specific tasks. So rather than being like a whole human body with a brain and arms and legs, generally most robots are going to be a big hand or, you know, a big arm or a big, I don't know, a big drill. So I find that interesting. I think as we get along further in like technological development, we'll see the combination of more of them. We'll see like, you know, AI driven, more complex robots. You know, Boston Dynamics is a great example. I think someday those will be making their own decisions, their own like kind of pathfinding algorithms running and stuff like that. But I just think it's interesting the way that like the pop culture conception of robots, as we start to kind of become more advanced, we're approaching sort of that pop culture conception slowly.
I don't know if you watch Marvel movies and Gamora's sister from that's all I'm thinking about right now is the combination of a human and a robot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there are going to be a lot of ways in which, like, there's this idea that we're going to have like neural implants that like speed up your brain's processing. I don't remember who proposed that. Things like that. I don't know if that's ever going to take off, but certainly from like a real quality of life standpoint, like, you know, prosthetics, they benefit a lot. Like the better a machine is able to interpret like your nerve impulses, the more like a human, more like a real human hand you'd have. So that kind of thing, I think that's what drives me forward. Those kind of like small advances, or in my case, right? Like the idea that something I do, like some robot someday could detect some damage that like saves a plane from taking off, and you know, when it's damaged, might not be able to land. So yeah,
very important. And I wouldn't think of a robot doing that, but that makes so much sense that they can do it without probing or having to take anything apart, that they can just kind of sense what's wrong. That's cool.
As we get more developed, I think, because like I mentioned earlier, I think the thing to understand about a robot is it does what you tell it. But I think that's the goal, is to where like you don't have to explicitly explain to it everything it needs to do. It starts to sort of like understand its task and be able to execute it on its own.
So can you introduce yourself again?
I'm Gus Loshelder. I'm a master's candidate at the University of Alabama. I work in the computational imaging and smart structures lab. I primarily work with ultrasound imaging and AI.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
That was incredible! Thank you to our special guest, Gus Lowshelder, a master's candidate at the University of Alabama, for joining us today. Now, let's work together to create a robot of our very own. For those of you that picked up the Tune In with TPL activity kits, this activity is the one with yellow instructions. If you missed out on an activity kit, please feel free to follow along and use supplies found around your own home. Now let's practice our best robot voice and count down from 5 with me as we put on our lab coats and set up our supplies to experiment with robotics.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
My name is Jeremiah Morrow. I'm 14 years old, and I'm a high schooler now. And you?
I'm Haley Bryant. I'm a librarian at the Tuscaloosa Public Library. Yeah.
And when did you become the librarian?
Oh, let's see. That probably would have been 2019. Yeah. I worked here a little bit before that, but then I went away and then came on back. And I've been here since 2019.
Today we're making a Scribblebot. I'm sure in again, the olden days when I was just a young boy, I think I made something similar to this one time. But I had an extreme assistance, but I'm sure we can get the two of us can get through this just
I feel
fine.
good about it.
We're gonna Scribblebot.
What do we need?
And the supplies. First, you're going to need a sheet of paper for the Scribblebot to draw on. Once you're done with it, everything else is included, such as a small motor, one elastic band, a AA battery, a plastic cup, a cork, 2 wires, electrical tape, 3 markers, and painter's tape.
All right. Okay, so
All right.
first step. What do we do?
Step number 1, flip the plastic cup upside down. So if it's turned up like you're going to pour something in it, turn it upside down.
Flip it. Yeah.
Upside down.
All right.
Next, using a piece of electrical tape, we tape the battery on the top of
So
the
I
cup.
can get the tape ready if you want to get
All
your
right,
battery
and
where
then
you
to
are.
get the battery.
Oh, and the electrical tape. You mentioned we have 2 tapes. So the electrical
The
one
electrical one will be black,
is... Okay. And then the other tape
and
is...
the painter's tape is red, so you don't confuse them.
And I think they might have different color painter's tape.
So any color
So-
besides black will
besides
be your painter's tape.
I think that's a good amount, right? Of tape
That's a
to get
great
it done?
amount. Make sure you have an adequate amount of
Yeah.
electrical tape.
All right. If you want to, do you want to place
Then
the
we
battery down?
Place the battery
All right.
onto the cup. Yes.
Perfect. All right. We've got our battery taped
Our
down with the
battery
electric tape.
is taped on top of the cup.
Perfect. Okay. Well,
All
what do we
right.
do next?
Wrap the elastic band around the battery to make sure it stays in place. So you have your elastic band, it's the black stretchy thing,
Yeah.
and you would put it around the
Let
battery.
it hug that battery.
It's hugging the battery like you hug your best friend on the last day of school.
so beautiful. That really is.
Step number 1 is complete.
Okay. So now.
Congratulations to us. Step number 2,
I'm so proud of us.
attach one end of each wire to the 2 golden leads on the motor. So
Okay. So we've got. I'll
we
hold
got
the motor
our
for you.
motor,
And then-
the small gray thing.
Yeah.
That's our motor, and we have our 2 blue wires.
Okay. Oh, and so we're
So-
attaching it here to these little gold prongs, huh?
Really small gold, somewhat copper-looking prongs on the motor here.
Okay. Do you want me to hold
So
the motor
we'd
while you
be
wrap it?
holding the motor, and then we just wrap it.
All right. So if your wires, probably when you get your wires, they're going to be a little frayed. So we found out if you twist them up, they'll stay, and it'll be easier for you to put them in with your battery.
Yes. So instead of it looking somewhat like a mop head, after twisting them, it should be a straight line like a gray worm.
Kind of like a little rope, and it's easier to work with, isn't it?
Yes, it's a lot easier to work with. So
Mm-hmm.
remember to twist them if you can.
I think if you want, we could just wrap it around there. Do you
Oh
want to
yeah,
try it
wait,
like
yeah,
that?
that seems like a really good idea. I'll just wrap it like that.
'Cause
That's
guess
a
what?
lot better.
We're basically making a little circuit here.
I knocked the cup over.
It's all right.
All right, wrapping our wire.
That's good.
Wrapping our wire.
Looks pretty secure. I think
we're
you did a
good.
good job there. All
And
right.
then the next wire on the prong that you haven't wrapped yet.
Okay.
Doesn't have to go through. You can wrap it around. I'm wrapping it around because I'm not so accurate.
Not a sewer, huh?
So you wrap it.
It's like threading a needle. Good. And you know what? I bet we could use the tape too to make sure that it's secure.
Yes,
That's pretty.
you can probably use some of the tape to make sure it's secured on the top.
Okay. Well, what's our next step?
Then, using another piece of electrical tape, tape the motor to the top of the cup with the arm facing outward. So, like,
Alright,
the
so our
little point should be faced away from the battery.
Okay. Okay, away from battery.
And
Alright,
it should form a T shape.
Okay, I see the T. You see it?
I see the T.
How about I cut another piece of this electrical tape, and then we can tape down our battery to the cup, and then try to get those wires so that they're pretty secure. Sound good?
Sound
All right.
good? Get it
That
on
looks
the
pretty
cup.
secure.
And
Got our wires still hanging tight there
okay,
too.
the wires are good. And the motor is successfully taped
Wow.
to the cup.
Good job. All
You
right.
should see the T, the battery should be at the top, and the motor should be the bottom of this T shape that you should be seeing, composed of the motor and the battery.
Okay.
Step number 2 is complete.
All right.
Step number 3, press the cork long ways onto the arm of the motor. So, like,
Okay.
the little part that you left sticking out of the motor, it should be, like, left sticking out. That is what you'll put your cork on. So you should press the cork in long ways.
And you made a
of
little
the-
hole there already.
Yes.
It's
If
kinda
you have a
challenging.
pen or pencil or anything with, like, that you can poke a hole,
Mm-hmm.
this cork, help poke the hole through the cork with. That's a lot. It makes it a lot easier.
Oh, woo.
So if you poke a hole through it, you should be able to
Get
push
on
it
there.
through the arm of the motor easily.
That looks good.
That looks great.
You made that look easy.
Then put the other end of each wire into the elastic band at the
Okay.
ends of the battery.
So we've got our wire here, and so now you're saying that we need to attach them to the ends of the battery, and then make sure
So
that
the band that you're using to hug the battery like you hug your best friend on the last day of school, you put it between the ends of the
Okay.
battery.
if your battery doesn't work, try crossing the wires and attaching them at opposite ends to replace the battery. Or
yes.
replacing that battery. Yeah.
Or replacing the battery.
So it's all about trial and error. All right, so you got your side pretty good. Oh, look! Did you hear that?
Oh, the cork was spinning.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't have it secure. All right, Jeremiah, let's see. Woo!
Okay, so doing this correctly,
It's pretty
the
important.
cork should start spinning.
Yep. That shows us
It's
our motor's
being
working.
powered by the battery. The battery is powering the motor, and the motor is spinning its arm, which the cork is on, and that is what's making your Scribblebot scribble.
Alrighty, so now we've got it on, and now I think we need to attach our markers, don't we?
Yes, we
Okay.
attach the
I'm
markers.
gonna take this off so we can put the markers on there.
Okay.
So what we will do, we got our 3 markers here. Ooh, these are pretty colors. Our colors are pink,
yellow, and blue. Any other
So-
colors works fine. I mean.
What we'll do is we'll need to put them downwards, right?
Okay.
And so that
So
the tip of the
it's-
marker's facing the paper.
Yes.
All right, so
Um.
so let's go ahead. If you want to do that, you can keep the caps on, and then I can. You want to get the tape off?
Okay, you can.
You me
handle
do the tape, and you put
that's
the
fine.
markers where they need to go.
And then, okay, I'll put the markers where they need to be.
It's always good to do this with an extra person, isn't it?
That was the sound of pulling tape.
All right.
Exciting. I like that.
Do you want to
Okay.
do one at a time? What's easiest
yes,
for
we
you?
can. We can. No, we can. Okay. Or we can do this one by one. You can do it slowly. You can attach the markers to the side of the cup.
All right, so we're gonna attach the 3 of them at the same time. Otherwise, it'll be uneven, won't it?
It will.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe I'll hold this up, and then you put them
On the
On.
cup.
and then giving ourselves enough room to take the lid off. And so 1. Okay. So where's your second marker?
And then the second, no.
Oh,
Okay,
I see.
yes.
Right
the
here?
second yes.
We gotta make sure
On
they're
the cup.
equal.
They have to be in equal distance away from each other, or else it won't be even.
Okay. Oh, and be careful. Look, I think that's the cork's right there, so we want to make sure we don't put it.
Oh yeah, make sure you do not put it where
It's
the
gonna
cork is.
spin. We just saw that, didn't we?
And if you attach it and it spins, it will hit the marker. So
Let's see.
make sure it's not where the cork is. It'll be functioning.
Oh, wait a second. Okay, I see. All right, so we got that there, and we need our third one, don't we?
Yep.
It's gonna be funny. We're gonna see if we didn't put this equal, because it's gonna wobble, isn't it?
But science is about trial and error.
That's
so if you mess
true.
up, you can try
It's gonna
again.
make pretty artwork either way. All right, you want to do the third one? So we've got our
And
pink
the
and our blue.
third one. Make sure it's able to stand as well. If it can't stand, make sure
We'll just
like
adjust them.
just stand. And if it can't stand, you can adjust them. But it should be able to stand and scribble.
And scribble, because what is it called? Scribble.
That's a scribble bot. It's in the name.
Here, look. I don't think ours is
Again,
gonna be able to
it's-
stand. Do you? All right. So we've got this here.
An equal distance apart,
And then
so it can
this one?
stand. Each marker can act as a leg, and it should be
Oh,
able
yeah.
to stand and scribble once you attach the
All
thing
right.
to the battery.
Okay. Moment of truth, huh? All right. So let's see what we can do. All right, Jeremiah. Do you
So-
want to take the?
Okay.
Oh.
By the way,
Oh.
we tried to attach all 3 at once, and it did not work. And if that doesn't work for you, you can attach each marker one at a time.
Yeah.
It still stands, or surprisingly still stands. That's
Trial and error, like you said. Yeah.
well, trial and error. We fixed it.
Okay. All right. So I think the next step is to see if ours works. Do you want to go ahead and take the marker, the tops of the markers
Okay,
off,
so
and then we'll
after
put our
you
wires
have
back?
assembled it, you have the 3 legs, you have the battery and motor attached to the top with the band hugging the battery like you hug your best friend on the last day of school. You have the cork on the arm of the motor, and you have your wires extending from the motor onto the battery so the battery can power the motor.
Yep.
So
All right.
you
So
take the
moment of
tops off of the marker, top off of the pink marker, top off of the yellow marker, top off of the blue marker,
truth. That one's tricky for you. All right.
and stand it. It still stands, but barely.
Ours is going to make a very unique
it's
picture.
somewhat stable. I have to make sure it does not fall.
All right. So this wire, I detached it
The detached
so that
wire.
we could add the things on. Do you want to put this one back in?
Okay, so we put this wire back in the
And I'll hold this right
back
here.
in the band.
Okay.
It-
All right.
and it's scribbling,
Look at the pretty
and it's
colors.
scribbling. It's making its own piece of artwork, and
How cool!
but yeah, it can scribble on its own. It has a mind
Make
of
your
its
own
own.
little creation, huh?
Yes, you made this yourself.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeremiah. This was fun.
Yeah, this was fun. This was fun. I get to.
That one's going a little bit faster, isn't it?
Now it's going pretty well. Get to relive my childhood. I made this when I was around 7 or 8.
Oh,
In my class.
cool. Now you get to do it again.
Yep. You should hear the ticking noise or spinning noise or whatever noise it makes while it scribbles. And it'll just scribble if you want. You can use any sheet of paper that you can draw on with a normal sheet of paper. copy paper, lined paper, cardboard paper, or any paper that you can draw on with a marker or crayon or anything like that.
And make something beautiful.
And you can make it your own.
Yay! Well, this was fun.
This was fun. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Your name is?
I'm Haley.
I'm Jeremiah, and we made a Scribblebot.
Thank you so much for listening in and following along as we learned about robots. If you're interested in learning more or experimenting with robots or coding in other ways, stop by any branch of the Tuscaloosa Public Library and ask a librarian to help you find some books or direct you towards some additional resources. If you can't make it to the library, be sure to check out the Libby or Hoopla app for more great books, audiobooks, or videos. Tune in with TPL will return with its last episode on Sunday, July 24th at 10 a.m. So be sure to tune into 96.1 and join us for another exciting STEM adventure.
Thank you for joining us for this segment of Tune In with TPL. This project was made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the University of Alabama, and the Tuscaloosa Public Library. Be sure to join us again next week for another exciting program and be prepared to learn something new.
This project was made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services through the grant Raise Up Radio, Family and Youth Engagement and Library Supported Learning via Radio, in coordination with the University of Alabama, the University of North Texas, and Tuscaloosa Public Library.